Right, now we're going to move on to storytelling and try and explain how this helps or can support your improvement work. This isn't a new subject. Stories have been used to hand down learning and knowledge for thousands of years. And a good story engages our curiosity, our emotions and our imagination. And that's drawing from the Health Foundation work that we'll speak about in a minute. So stories are important. They are a part of our everyday life. You might not have been expecting to learn about storytelling as a part of, well, maybe any module on your courses, but maybe more specifically in terms of health leadership. But I think it's important for two reasons. Firstly, for you as an individual, you are a storyteller. You will tell stories as a part of this module through your presentation. Yes, you will be basing it on facts and theory, but you will also be trying to persuade me, trying to influence the way I think about your presentation. So having an understanding of how you can have an impact in the messaging and the stories that you tell is important for you as a student. Then as a either existing member of staff or future member of staff, storytelling is important in terms of a tool to help you engage with other people. And engaging with other people is important if you want them to do something that you need them to do to help develop, change or improve the way services are delivered. So storytelling, I'm hoping, is important from both a personal student perspective for you, as well as in the future in your working roles as a tool to help you influence others to achieve improvements in their work. In this presentation, I'm going to introduce you to storytelling in the context of healthcare. And as it says, stories are the way we understand and make sense of the world we find ourselves in. And I'm going to address this from the perspective of you as a storyteller, as a clinician in healthcare, but also for you as an improvement project lead. Before going into any more detail, I'd just like to share this link. It's developed by the Empathy Museum and the Health Foundation. This was originally set up as a real exhibition where individuals could, members of the public could walk into the exhibition and choose a pair of shoes which they would put on, and whilst walking around they would listen to the story of the owner of those shoes. And that person could be a member of staff in healthcare, a clinician, a member of the public, a carer. Each story really set an understanding of what life was like for each of those individuals and provided a really different perspective on how healthcare works and how healthcare affects individuals. It just might be of interest. It was a fascinating project from the Health Foundation. What I'm going to do is look at storytelling from the perspective of you as a storyteller in your life and your daily job that you do. And I'm just going to draw from two particular sources. One is from the Health Foundation, which is using storytelling in healthcare improvement, but also then looking at a short article called Making Your Presentation Stick. Both of these documents are available on the course sites system for you to have a look at. Storytelling is useful in a range of settings and is a valuable skill in any role, but it's not something we always consider. Good news is it is a learnable skill. Both of these documents are very short and easy reading and might be of some interest to you. The Health Foundation overview highlights some of the key components or skills of telling a good story, and these are shown on the screen. So the other tips that they highlight is around choosing a story that conveys a message that you need to get across, and make sure the circumstances are meaningful or relevant to the people you want to influence. And again, it's around picking out, as it says, pick out one example, tell the story of that one experience, rather than talking in general terms. And from that, they're suggesting pick out only the most relevant points that carry the story. Good storytelling depends on your ability to leave out any unnecessary detail. And that, I think, is interesting. It's what you choose to edit into the story is as important as what you leave out. Also, include a good opening that grabs the attention and have a strong ending. If you find the outcome of a story engaging, it's more likely others will too. the use of descriptive details is really important. It's about making the story come to life and helping individuals visualise and empathise with the message that you want to get across. The Health Foundation highlight that stories can be told across a range of channels, so you can use it in your own presentations and speeches, often very powerful way if you include a good story that engages. But you can also include it in written format as an article or a newsletter, or even a blog maybe, or on your website. And of course, as ever, the photograph, the picture will tell 1,000 words and bring that story to life. Again, short films and videos don't have to be professionally recorded. We can do most things now with our phones. But you can also tell your story through an online audio slideshow, which is often a lot cheaper and quicker to produce. The stories should be engaging, so talk to and with the people that you work with to share those stories. You'll find that they will also and often retell and tell those stories and carry on the message that you want to be taken. In summary, the Health Foundation highlight that to tell a good story, you should have that clear central message. Use pictures or use descriptive language to really highlight the story you want to tell. Engage with emotions and drive people's curiosity to want to know more. And the first point was to involve only a few people. Let's make this real and grounded to one person. Let's not talk in general terms. People find it better and easier to engage when they're talking about a single thing, a single person, or a single issue. Moving on to the Making Your Presentation Stick document. I found this interesting because it does challenge the way we've often been taught or expect presentations to be delivered, which is to follow the fairly standard logic of tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you've told them. That's what's often used as a way to structure presentations. That repetition of the message being the main intervention to try and engage with the person listening to your presentation. This book challenges us in that approach and asks us to think, and it follows a very similar approach to that of the Health Foundation. So they argue, rather than starting with data, which is what we tend to do, they argue and draw from Michael Moore's film that you cut straight to the point. Don't have a conceptual discussion about, in his case, the American healthcare system and the data that no doubt will support the challenges of X hundreds of thousand people without access to the appropriate care. He cuts straight to the argument and gives the example of the carpenter who cuts off 2 fingers and has to choose which finger to reattach, since he can't afford to do both. And that, I think, really highlights the power of starting with that impact. You can always fill the additional information to support that case, but you've got the attention of the audience. This approach to delivering presentations obviously doesn't work in every scenario, but I really liked the way it challenged often the traditional way of us thinking and presenting, and getting us to think about what do we like to listen to, how do we engage and consume information that's provided to us, and it just illustrates the potential power and value of storytelling. So far, I've just introduced you to 2 documents that help to perhaps frame and help to explain how you can develop stories as a way of communicating with people. What we're going to do, move on now, is to look at 4 examples of specific tools that can be used to help you if you are looking to lead an improvement, a change in a particular area. And these 4 examples hopefully will give you some very specific ways you can develop your storytelling techniques as a leader. This document was developed in Scotland in 2013 and is talking around storytelling in the specific context of social care, but the learning and reflections are entirely valid and appropriate within a health setting as well. In this document, they talk about storytelling as an individual account of an event to create a memorable picture in the mind of the listener. And I find this this document a more rounded consideration of storytelling, and importantly, its effects. So in a way, this can set the context for storytelling as we move into more detail in the subsequent documents. And a consistent theme throughout all of the approaches to storytelling is recognising the value of storytelling, and that is that it delivers a richer understanding about the needs or the thoughts or the way an individual makes sense of any particular situation. What do I mean by fake news? Well, what I mean is that there's no fake news, but equally there is no truth. Not wishing to become too philosophical about it, I'm not questioning our very being, but rather in the specific context of a person's experience. The story has the ability to create and communicate many personal truths, and not just one objective truth. So what we mean by that is, if I think or feel something, my feelings, my perceptions are real. It is true to me. Knowledge isn't something that we as human beings don't find or access. We make sense of it and we create it. So in the context of dentistry and specifically, or potentially considering the compliance, you as a clinician, experienced clinician, have a view of what the best evidence is and what the best approach is for oral health and oral hygiene. But me, as the person, as the patient, will have my own experiences in making sense of what's important and what's not. And that's the truth that I create. So we continually change our views in light of our new experiences and are influenced by, for example, a shared understanding. And that comes from culture and language. Together then, for me, whilst the practice of clinical activity is just that, it's clinical, evidence-based and focused on the most effective intervention, we also know real life and people are complicated. So stories are a way into understanding this complexity, not explaining it, but understanding this complexity. So listening to how people tell their story, what they include, what they don't include, is as important as the story itself. And what I like about this overview of storytelling is that it acknowledges the darker side of stories. So telling stories on behalf of other people means if you're telling that story, you're putting a voice into an individual or a group of individuals. The telling of, repeating and editing of stories is also an opportunity to influence power and coercion of the story. So stories aren't these pure things that we can develop and deliver. They're constantly evolving. They're the sense-making process. But recognising the powerful sense of that richer understanding that we can gain from storytelling and listening to stories, whilst also recognising the limitations or risks of it, there is a very clear path from understanding the story to making an improvement. And in this document, the Scottish Recovery Network and what's called the CME Scotland reveals how personal stories are used in the promotion of recovery and social inclusion by mental health users in Scotland. It involved individuals either recovered or in the process of recovery, sharing their own personal accounts of lived experiences. Storytelling influences change at an individual practice as well as at an organisational level. And I think of interest for what we're doing here, personal storytelling benefits. 1,000 Lives Improvement is the National Improvement Programme for Wales, and one element of the improvement programme relates to storytelling. It's one that focuses primarily on patient stories and the use of patient stories. And it really echoes many of the issues and themes that we've picked up already, which is that you can get a better understanding of individuals' experiences and perspectives on a specific issue or service. It does highlight that you can't generalise individual patient stories about the service user experience, although I might question that the very fact of sharing the stories often will mean those stories are used on behalf of a wider population. But it does highlight that each story is valid as it represents the individual's experience. And using stories alongside other data sources to gain powerful insight into what might be happening in the service or system, I think is really interesting. So storytelling isn't the answer to improvement, but it certainly can complement the way we approach improvement work. As a part of the 1,000 Lives toolkit for storytelling, it also identifies that there can be 4 or even 5 different ways of developing one story. And as it shows on the screen, you've got that could be taking the patient's story and using it as an opportunity to learn. Another one could be around inspiring others to change or inspiring others to engage in the subject. Another one could be about education, so learning from issues. And then finally, the media. And the other and fifth one, which is more complex, is also using it as a basis for research. So the 1,000 Life process is one that focuses on gathering patient stories as a rich source of information, as a rich source of understanding how the services work. They use that and analyse that data using techniques such as mind mapping to understand where the themes are, and then consider how or what you want to take this information forward through what channel, it be that learning, inspiring education and so on. All of which brings us back to that idea of focusing on and searching for a richer, a deeper understanding about how people make sense of and respond to the way we deliver healthcare. We're back with the Health Foundation, but this is their more detailed toolkit supporting communication and specifically storytelling. And evidence indicates that considering communication from the beginning to the end of a project could be an important factor in the spread of successful healthcare improvement. And this model for me is well written and structured, and it's directed for leaders wanting to develop large-scale improvement projects. So this may go beyond the scope of the kind of project we're looking to undertake. Each section of the framework is broken down into more detail and tools provided to help you. So, for example, in creating a communication strategy, it provides an overview of 2 models, the strength, weakness, opportunities, threats, the SWOT model, and the PEST, the political, economic, social and technology models, as a way to understand the environment in which you'll be delivering change, setting communication objectives and evaluating communications and developing the strategy. So this is a very detailed toolkit to support you in communication more broadly, but in also telling the stories along the journey of your change. But as I say, this is, for me, targeted at much larger scale changes and may not be as flexible for the needs that you have at the moment. Discovery interviews are only one of a number of possible approaches to involving patients and carers in improving care. They're particularly useful when clinical and other practice-based teams want to directly learn about patients' needs and use this understanding to stimulate improvement ideas they can test out in their services. The guide reflects the work of the Coronary Heart Disease Collaborative and Critical Care Programmes in England from and between 2000 and 2003, and they were evaluated in 2005. So this isn't new stuff, but it is a very useful tool. So the aim is to explore and learn from the impact of illness on people's everyday lives. Evidence has emerged that taking this approach produces knowledge about the needs that may have significant impact on recovery and well-being. So we can start to understand how this approach goes beyond just a better understanding. It improves outcomes. So discovery interviews provide opportunities for patients and their carers to directly tell the story of their illness or condition using a framework. This framework is referred to as a spine, and that guides them through the key stages of their experience. And this allows them, having this sense of a spine, allows the patient and carer to tell their story in their own terms, but the spine makes sure that they keep moving through their process and their experience. So interesting, well, maybe to me at least, is that the NHS improvement linked the discovery interviews to the PDSA cycle. So in essence, the discovery interview provides the insight, the hunches, to be taken forward in a PDSA improvement cycle. The detailed approach to gaining support for and implementing discoveries is also set out in the guide. So I think discovery interviews are a really interesting way of getting under the skin of issues within our health services and understanding them from the perspective of the patient and carer, And in any context, be that about improving services or helping you to develop as a leader, having that detailed understanding will help you, I am quite sure. And the evidence and evaluation of these approaches supports that as well. Where we started with this subject of stories was recognising that they've been used to hand down learning and knowledge for thousands of years, and that a good story engages our curiosity, emotions and imagination. That's where we started. And I think through all of the focus on process that often comes with quality improvement, what we can see is storytelling is a valuable tool to explore and understand both the challenges and opportunities we face in healthcare. And specific tools such as the NHS discovery interviews and the 1,000 Live approaches provide a structure to open up the discussion with your patients, with the people and carers that you deal with, to try and gain that deeper insight that might then help you find ways to improve in your services. And also a better understanding of how we tell stories that have impact.